Hey everyone, welcome back to the Camino Cafe. Very happy to have you here at the Pilgrim table again. And just a couple of things I just wanted to say. Make sure, if you're interested, to sign up for the Facebook group that I have set up for the podcast. And it is on Facebook as the Camino Cafe podcast group. It is a private group, not because I want it to be private, but because that's what it's called on Facebook. But it is a group where people who support the podcast or have maybe special interests in the episodes can kind of gather together and we can talk about things. This year, I will be offering some new things on that page only, and that will include some follow-up interviews with folks that I've been interviewing where we will come on and do a Facebook Live. So you will have an opportunity to ask your own questions after you've seen the interview, as well as some other things that I have planned. So I hope that you will join me there and the rest of the community. I also have just a regular page. So just remember that the one I'm talking about with the special offers is the Camino Cafe podcast group. And I've been having some really fun episodes. I just interviewed a couple of folks yesterday, and today I have Lisa Morales with me, and she is an American-based pilgrim, and you probably already know her name. I think I first heard of Lisa the minute I started thinking about walking the Camino. So she has been a true supporter of the Camino for a number of years. And so we're going to hear some amazing stories. She and I have been chatting it up for the past, half hour, or maybe 45 minutes. I probably should have been recording because she's said already so many brilliant things. So Lisa, thank you for coming to the Camino Cafe today.
Oh, thanks for having me. There's no lack of things to talk about with Camino enthusiasts. So
no, we could talk all night, couldn't we? And Lisa's sitting there waiting for a big snowstorm that's about to happen in her area. Are you actually in Boston? Are you near?
I'm south. I'm right at the Cape Cod Canal, the bridge to Cape Cod. So yeah, we're usually right on the snow line, but we're going to get it this time. So it's coming. It's okay. It's January. So if it weren't moving, it would be a little bit like less stressful, but yeah, we're going to get it. So.
Yeah. Well, I've wanted to talk to you for some time for an interview. And finally, when I saw that you had just served at one of the albergues or one of the donativos in Terre, I was like, I've got to talk to her because I walked right before I'd walked through almost a couple of weeks right before you were there serving. So I would really like to maybe kind of start there because I think a lot of folks have interest in, what's going on in the Camino right now. We're still in COVID, maybe some of the worst of it is over. And so I just wanted to talk about what made you decide to volunteer this time. I know you've done it other times, in which we will talk about all that as well. But what prompted you to do that this past, I guess it was fall, early winter, would you say?
Yeah, I went over, I left the States November 1st. So I came back at the mid-December. So I was in Europe for those weeks, and I actually was on the Camino in France, in Spain, and in Portugal in those weeks. So I can kind of give you a little report from all of those places.
Was that Terre or
I was volunteering in France, in Lourdes. There is a pilgrim hostel up on the mountains called Cité Saint-Pierre, and it's open almost year round. It closes a couple of weeks in January. But there's a wonderful, wonderful place there in Lourdes. And then you can walk south on the Piedmont or to go through Canfranc over the Col Saint-Paul, or you can head to Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port on that route. So I was there in my first few weeks. And then I went to Portugal to meet my son, and we went to Lisbon and Coimbra. So we walked a day on the Portuguese out of Coimbra, and then I went to Spain. I went to Santiago, and I went to Nájera from there. And I went because I pushed it as far as I could, wanting to be in Santiago in the Holy Year. So it was very important to me to actually complete the pilgrimage in the Holy Year, and I did that. So that's why, and I know they extended it, but to me, that was a little bit touristic as opposed to, and I know that the whole Holy Year thing is a convention and it's made up by modern day people. I get that, but it is what it is. And it was really important for me to be there and to do that during the Holy Year. So I did.
Excellent. All right. Yes, that's going to be great for us to talk about. So I guess let's start with your impressions of Spain. How did it feel being in Najera during that time frame, and what were your experiences like serving?
It was different. It was definitely different than the other times that I have volunteered. Not better, not worse, just different. And there's big differences between France, Spain, and Portugal. And I didn't go until I had my booster on board. So I was double vaxxed and boosted, or I wouldn't have gone anywhere. I'm almost 60. I have lots of health issues, but I felt actually more comfortable there than in my town where it's 60% vaccinated. But France has the whole COVID pass thing down pat. There's nowhere you can go without showing that pass and getting it scanned. Even if you're going to sit outside on the terrace, you have to be scanned, contact tracing, the whole 9 yards. That was that's all there is to it. If I got up to get a napkin from the table at lunch, people would remind me to put my mask on.
Oh yeah.
Like, you didn't step anywhere, you put the mask on. So I felt really comfortable in France. Went to Spain, no checks at the airport. Nobody asked me for a COVID pass. Airport's busy, it's crowded. Getting on the trains, busy, crowded, people mobbed in, and they don't ask you for your pass until you're at the train. So all that mob, unvaccinated, so I felt uncomfortable with that. My backpack gives me some personal space behind me, and I would, enforce my personal space in front of me, but that was less comfortable. Portugal was a little bit more loosey-goosey, no COVID pass required anywhere. So that was a little bit more lenient and less comfortable.
You didn't have to show your QR code when you flew into Spain, or did you train?
Nothing, because I was traveling within the EU. Nothing.
I just flew from Vienna back into Spain, and I had to show my QR code, and they actually were very strict about it. So that's interesting.
Well, and that's something people need to know. From this week to next week, it's going to change.
Exactly.
So in November and December, when I was flying, no, I was not. I wasn't asked on public transport. And that's another thing, is that in Paris, they're so strict, but there's no QR code required to ride the subway or a bus. So people are pouring in from all over the world, land in France, and they get on the subway at Charles de Gaulle. You don't know who you're on the subway with. So my take from all of this has, since day one, has been personal responsibility. Yes. I have to take responsibility for my own health situation. And if I'm not comfortable, that's my issue. I need to step away. It's not somebody else's problem. But that said, we all have an interrelated responsibility to stop this thing. And so it's complicated, but it's not difficult. Yeah. My mask protects me and you, and that's the way it is. So in the albergue, we only had to turn away. We didn't actually turn him away, but we told him he would have to wear his mask, and he didn't want to wear his mask, so he left.
Because of no vaccination, or
not vaxxed, yeah. But even if they are vaxxed, there's no dispensation for the mask. So masks are required indoors, period. And that's just not possible to enforce. I mean, you're in the dormitory, people came together, they're friends, they're chatting, they're not wearing a mask. And if you're eating, you're not wearing a mask, and that's when you're more susceptible to getting breathed on or whatever.
Yeah.
So you have to be, it's what your comfort level is, and we weren't going to be the mask police, but my co-hospi and I are both mature adults, shall we say. We're over the age where we're supposed to be worried. And we felt, we are responsible for the other pilgrims. So people were very proud of their unvaccinated status, and they're the ones who would tell you they're not vaccinated. And then those are the ones that social pressure in the group would also be like, so put your mask on. And if they don't want to, then there's lots of other choices of where to stay. Or you can go pay for a hotel. So it's different. It's definitely different. But
were you able to have communal dinners during that time that you were there, or what did you
yes, do? We did, and not officially, but I cook every day for the Pilgrims. There's always hot soup at my albergues, so come on down. So yeah, we did. We had a lot of communal dinners, and then we would, occasionally go out to dinner in town. But we made our choices about where we would eat outside or not. But again, it's our personal responsibility and to take care of the people in the town hosting us, as well as the other Pilgrims in the albergue. And if somebody was uncomfortable and they wanted to be down the other end of the dorm, we were able to do that because it's not crowded. It's winter, that's something I can't stress enough, is if you don't want to be around crowds, don't walk in the summer. Just don't do it, because you're going to be around crowds. You're going to be around crowds, all kinds of crowds. And that's how it is. So if that's not comfortable for you, don't do it then. That's all there is to it. There was never a night we didn't have Pilgrims, even though it was cold, it was snowing, it was really rainy. As you know, you were out there that time. It was rainy and it was cold and it was kind of miserable. But everybody was like really happy and psyched, and nobody was rushing for beds, and they loved to be able to come in and have hot soup. And so it was still a wonderful experience.
Yeah, and when you're walking, your body temperature is up, right? So it's okay that it's a little cooler a lot of days. And we actually now are having a pretty mild winter. And so I look out and I see these Pilgrims passing by, and I'm kind of envious because it's perfect walking weather during the day. The sun is out, at least in Ravenel, right around this area. So it's been really nice. I would love to talk about your experience just overall, not so much about COVID now, but just your overall experience in volunteering and what drove you to do that. And maybe if you could kind of speak to, because you've had experience in volunteering in different ways, like if somebody's listening to this and they have already walked and they would like to volunteer, what would be your advice for them? And, how would they go about becoming an hospitalario?
Sure. There's lots of different ways to give back on the Camino, even if you don't leave home. So, your volunteering can be domestic as well. There's different Pilgrim organizations. There's local chapters. There's now the Wisconsin Way, a domestic Camino. There's also the California Mission Walkers. So people shouldn't assume that means going to Spain. But if it does, I was trained as a hospitalero back in, I think, 2015 in the American Pilgrims training group, but that's not the only way to get to volunteer. And I think it's really important to know your tolerance level, because it's a different Camino. It's totally a Camino. People are going to be coming into your life on a daily basis, and they're, sorry folks, but not all Pilgrims are angels. And, some are very demanding, and some are downright nasty. Not a lot, but it happens. And you have to be willing to take what comes to you every day. The best part is they're going to leave in the morning. So it's temporary.
For the one day they stay.
It's one day. So it's a different Camino. And I had challenges in Albergue Renero. I had a really big challenge that was testing the limits of hospitalero stamina.
Can you tell us a little bit about that, or is it too...
it was a long time ago now, so nobody should think that this is ongoing, but I got there and there was a huge bedbug infestation, not just a little bedbug infestation, a really big one. In August. And so it was a challenge. It was a real challenge to get the appropriate response to that, ultimately having to close the albergue, get the right treatment. Loses money for the town when you have to close, and that in August, it's not what anybody wants, but safety of Pilgrims has to come first. So that was a challenge. But there's different kinds of ways to volunteer. You can volunteer in the Pilgrim's office. You can volunteer in private albergues. public albergues, municipal albergues, parochial albergues, and donativo albergue, which are generally run by associations. So there's different experiences with that. You can volunteer at the Pilgrim's office in San Jean Pied de Port. At the front end, you can volunteer at the Pilgrim's office in Santiago. At the back end, you can volunteer with religious organizations along the Camino. So you have to know what your level of tolerance is. Are you able to live with and work with somebody, another partner that you may not even have the same language? So that's the important part, is knowing what you're going to be able to tolerate, because it all looks so fun when you're the pilgrim and you're just kind of happily going along. And people will complain, ad nauseum if they have a bad hospitaliero experience. But you have to be on the other end of that to really understand what that person may be dealing with.
When you say tolerate, I understand that one story that would have been really, really difficult to tolerate. But when you say what your tolerance level is, what kind of tolerance are you talking about? Like the rudeness that could occur?
You don't have any private space. So you have to be willing to not have any private space in your life for 14 consecutive days. You're really not off duty, not ever truly off duty. You're holding the keys and you're responsible. You're responsible for the finances. You're responsible for the shopping. You're responsible for the cleanliness. You're responsible for the relations to the town, being positive. So it's more than just opening the door and welcoming the pilgrims. Not everybody's going to do their own dishes and they're going to leave you a pile for the morning. There's just, if you're not okay with that, and you have to be able to partition the duties with your partner. So if you've got a partner who doesn't like to get up in the morning, or doesn't want to do the dishes, or doesn't want to clean the toilets, you just got to know what you're going to be okay with for that. So yeah, it's not, and then there's the Rebadiso Welcome Center, where you really are just welcoming pilgrims, and there's other people who do the grunt work. Yeah. So each place is going to have a different experience. I volunteered in Portugal at San Pedro de Roch, and they had local volunteers who came on the weekends and gave you the weekend off. Oh my God, that was incredible. They employ a local woman to do the heavy duty housekeeping because it gives her a job. But she has very specific requirements for you to be, before she'll do that job. So it's going to be different everywhere. So I think it's good to know.
Do you think, Lisa, that people need to be fluent in other languages? So like most of the people probably listening to this, probably English is their first language. Do you think that they need to speak Spanish or French or Portuguese?
It certainly helps. At one place, my co-hospy and I, our common language was French, but I'm fluent in French. I hear perfectly well in Spanish, but I don't always speak Spanish fluently because it comes out as like Franglish. But yeah, I think it really, really, really helps to be able to, and when something goes haywire, it's really good to be able to have a conversation with the local constabulary, but it does help. So that's all I can say is, if you only speak English, you should never expect other people to accommodate that. Yeah. So
I've made friends with several folks since my last Camino and living here in Spain that have served as hospitaleros. And one of the things that I have kind of felt in conversation with them, and I just wanted to ask you about this, is that sometimes they seemed a little sad. They maybe were first-time volunteers, and they were hoping to interact more with pilgrims, but because it was so busy and they had so many duties, and that the pilgrims were kind of interacting with their pilgrim family, that it didn't have the same feel to it as it might feel when you're walking. So I wondered if you feel that way, or if you could elaborate on it's just totally off base.
No, I think it's very true. Like I said, it's a different Camino, but it's still a Camino. So they have probably formed a pilgrim family, and they're already a thing, a group when they get to you. And again, you're only going to see them for their waking hours, and then they're gone again. So you shouldn't expect to be part of that family, in the same way that you would as another pilgrim. Plus, you are really busy. I mean, it's really, really busy. So that's definitely, I guess I add that to the tolerance part, that, can you accept being, kind of like the help and not the pilgrim? That's different.
Yes.
And sometimes you get treated like the help. And so also a big change that I've seen since my first experience being hospitalera is that people now go and lay on their beds and get out their phone. Mm-hmm. They're not even communicating with other pilgrims as much.
Yes, I saw that.
That is a huge change, and it's not a good change for me, especially the younger ones, but everybody's guilty of it. They take their shower and they go lay on their bed and they get on their phone. Yep. And they're texting or FaceTiming or whatever, but they're not communicating with the people around them or the hospitaleros. So I've seen that as a really, really big change over the last, I guess now it's 7 years. Yeah, I think that's a detriment.
I agree with you. The donativos that I stayed in, or I guess it went albergues, but they were dorm style. It almost felt like quiet hour. Like I would arrive and, want to take my shower and do my change of clothes. And everyone was so quiet because they were in their bunks doing phone stuff that you almost felt like you couldn't interact. And then until dinner. And then at dinner, everyone kind of interacted. And then it was right back to kind of this private world. So that was a little different. And if there wasn't a group dinner, then you didn't even have that. Like you were just kind of on your own. So yeah, that is a change. I wonder, there are probably some folks listening to this that have never walked and are interested in walking. And since we've been kind of talking about this, we've probably been using a lot of words that don't make a lot of sense.
Right.
I wonder if you could just break down for everyone that when you are walking, you have some choices of where you can stay. And maybe if you could just start maybe the most expensive and work our way down, or whatever ways you would want to organize it, in some kind of order to kind of give people an idea of what they can expect as far as lodging while they're walking.
Sure. I just talk about it in tiers, but in the expense really could be the inverse, so who knows. But you can have private lodgings, and if something is on booking.com, it's open to everybody. It means you're not going to be just with pilgrims. You could be with, vacationers, you could be with college students that are just out. So those are private, for profit, and are going to have different amenities and different costs associated with them. And it's not going to be an exclusively pilgrim experience. There are municipal albergues, which are run by the city or the junta or whatever, the county, provincial government. And they set the rules, they set the, what the expectations are. In Galicia, they're run by the junta. And big change this year has been that you can, and I think have to, reserve in Galicia now through their new system. And they set a minimum donation because they can. And a lot of those started as, a way to bring pilgrims into towns that had been left by the wayside. But have since probably built up a different kind of private enterprise structure. Then there's parochial places that can be run by religious organizations like Bercianos or Corriendo de los Condes. And then you have the donativo, pay what you can, which donativo does not mean free, that are run by various associations that are usually not nonprofits. And there's several different groups that run those in the different places. But the Federation runs some in Spain, and the Hasvals, Hospitalarios Voluntarios organization, they staff about 20 of them. But those could also be, they're staffing them for everything from municipals to parochials. And then you have the ones that are purely run by just one group, like San Pedro de Roch. That's a they formed a group, rented a space, and they administer that. But to the pilgrim, what really matters is, I think that you should set your expectations as a pilgrim according to what your choice is of accommodation, because you shouldn't have the same expectation as a reserved paying guest as you do as someone who is giving you an accommodation in exchange for your free will donation, and is staffed strictly by volunteers who have given up their time, left their home to come and serve you as the pilgrim. So I think it's important that people understand those different levels of services and set your expectations accordingly.
Yeah. Well, maybe we'll try to put in the show notes some examples and some links so people can see what we're talking about there, because I know it's a lot of information. But yes, thank you for clarifying that. That is fantastic. So when did this love affair with the Camino start for you?
2014 was when I first walked with my son. He was 10 the first year.
Whoa.
I was turning 50. And so he walked with me on the Norte to Ribadeo when my knee gave out. And he marked the map and said, here's where we start next time, Mom. And two years later, we did go back and finish to Santiago. And like I said, he just came over to hang out with me in Lisbon and Coimbra. So he's grown up around the Camino. And we were moving to France to buy an albergue in 2016 when his father decided not only did he not want to move to France, but he didn't want to be married anymore. So he was registered for school for 6th grade in France, and we were 2 weeks from closing on the building, and we had our visas ready to go to live in France. The electricity was on in my name, and it all fell through. So
Lisa.
Yeah, we were on the Voie de Vézelay, and just like you said, the pilgrims walk by your front door, the pilgrims were walking by our front door, just outside of.
Were you actually there when this happened?
No, we were 2 weeks from going. Our house was sold, our furniture was sold, everything was sold. So we were ready to go. So the good news is they took all my money and made an albergue. So it's good for the pilgrims, but it's not my albergue. So
that was quite a blow. How did
it was?
I can't even imagine.
It really was.
How did you process all of this?
I'm still processing it, and I can't even look at pictures of that property. I can't even go to that town. It's just too painful. But it's, it didn't stop me from going back. It didn't stop me from continuing to volunteer. And my son's going to graduate this year, and, it starts again. So it's a different Camino. It's always a different Camino. So
it's a different Camino, right?
It's always a different Camino. And, my inspiration for the whole hospitality end of it was Padre Ernesto. I don't know if you know Padre Ernesto and Güemes on the Norte. And Thomas, my son, and I stayed with Padre Ernesto on our first Camino. And I was so taken with the enthusiasm and the truest sense of hospitality that this man had. And I love him because he's a little bit of a renegade too. So Camino renegade, but he took his family property. He's an ordained Catholic priest. He took his family's property and turned it into this big compound for pilgrims. And he does a sermon every night before dinner on the Camino de la Vida, the Camino of life, and how life is your Camino. And he had done outreach work with indigenous communities in South America. And I was so taken by that experience that's what set me off on, okay, we're going to move, we're going to buy the albergue. But it also has informed my work as a volunteer, either domestically as part of our chapter, mentoring other pilgrims, or when I'm serving in Europe. So yeah, Padre Ernesto was a really big influence on me.
After we finish our call, I would love to get that link to something so I can show folks the place you're talking about, because you said that's on the Norte, right?
Yeah.
Okay. One time I feel like you and I might have been on a call at the same time, and you talked about a book that every hospitalero should read.
Yeah, absolutely. That's funny. You remember that. That's funny
it really stuck out to me, and I wanted to buy it, and I don't know. I think that was during COVID early on. It's been a while, and I'm like, I need to ask Lisa about that. So this is a good time. We should talk about it.
That's funny that you remember that. Yeah, I mean, it's a simple one. It's the Rule of Saint Benedict. The original author of Hospitality Rules, right? And it's available online and free ebook, but it's the Benedictine orders, set down by Saint Benedict, and to me, there's just no need to really improve on that. It says it all, and being the basic premises is that you don't know whose guise Jesus is coming in, and you've got to treat everyone as if they are the Lord coming to your door, and that's the basic premise. And to be able to do that without judgment, without reservation, without fear.
Oh,
it's a big one. It's a big one.
And that kind of comes back to what you talked about on tolerance level, right? So folks reading that would really have an idea, like, could you handle any kind of situation with that attitude? And that would be a good gut check every morning and every night as you're serving. I'm definitely going to order that now, because ever since that conversation, and I don't know why I haven't reached out to you already about it.
That's funny that you remember that, but it's it's kind of like a handbook for life, and it's really short.
Even better.
There's some Camino gurus out there like Padre Ernesto that really influenced me. Rebecca Scott, of course, is one of them. And the work that she's doing now with Peaceable Projects is phenomenal. Daniel Decay, who epitomizes the hospitaleros, all of those tenets that we just talked about. He does that in his everyday life too. I think that those are really good benchmarks to be able to set that. If you want to go do this, and even if you're going to be a pilgrim, you need to understand from your side of the threshold when you're walking in, the same concept applies to you walking in that door.
I'm so glad you said that, Lisa, because I think I got some really good advice on my first Camino about the importance of not walking in demanding something. Don't go into a cafe and use the bathroom without buying a coffee. Addressing very simple things, addressing people. And I made it a real point this last time on my Camino that I cleared always my own table. I always took everything up to the counter. And people I was walking with, they were kind of like, why are you doing this the first couple of times? And then when they got used to seeing me do that, everybody was kind of doing that in my group. And the reaction from the cafe owners was so beautiful, because it was like, oh, you acknowledge that this is kind of, because the cafes are busy and they got a lot going on. And so I think what you're bringing up, we should be reading that book on both sides. That is great advice. Now, I want to put in a plug for always Rebecca's book, A Furnace Full of God, because I shouldn't say this as a podcaster, but it is my favorite Camino book because of such things that she talks about in that book. So I always want folks to read her book. But
it's a beautiful book. There's many beautiful books, but that is a beautiful book on many different levels.
Yes, exactly. And that's a whole show in itself. But Daniel McKay, that name, if I got that correctly, I'm not familiar with him. Where is he?
Daniel is a trainer for the Hospitalero Voluntario program for American Pilgrims on the Camino. He has served many, many times, and he's walked many, many times. but in his other part of his life, he's a registered nurse, and he's a wilderness first aid trainer for Knowles. So all of those parts of his life come together, and helping to train inside and out, mentally and otherwise, the group of pilgrims that American Pilgrims sends over. So I think he's a benchmark of how to handle stuff. And when I have how to handle stuff questions, they go to Daniel and Rebecca always. So.
Okay. All right. Well, that's good for everyone to know. So thank you.
Now they're going to blame me for their phone ringing off the hook, but always real, basic advice. It's like how to handle stinky pilgrims. Oh, well, pretend you're going to be washing your own laundry and offer to do theirs too.
That's good.
Right? Show up with a basket, throw a piece of clothes in it, and go, oh, anybody else want their clothes washed? That's a Rebecca tip.
Oh my gosh, that's so good. Okay, we need to have a whole show of just those tips. That's wonderful. Okay, when I was preparing for this talk that I knew we'd be having, I read somewhere or heard on another podcast that you actually walked backwards from Muxia.
I did.
All the way to Porto. So I'm
did.
fascinated by that. I've been interviewing a young Spanish gal who is walking backwards from Terre all the way to Jerusalem. And she's doing that for a full year. She's walking right now as we're speaking. She just finished up the Galician area. Anyway, I'm always fascinated. Anytime that I would walk and somebody was coming the opposite direction, I know we got on their nerves. We're like, hey, you're going the wrong way, right? It's like an awful joke. So I just wanted to talk about that because, what was that like for you? What made you decide to do that? It's fascinating to me.
Yeah, it was actually really good. It was the first time I walked without my son. So when you're walking with your kid, you have this huge responsibility to make sure they're fed and they're not too tired and their feet are okay. And, so it was my first time walking by myself. And so I decided I didn't want to have a Camino family, that I wanted to be just responsible for myself. And, but I wanted to be with pilgrims every night. So that was the way I did it. And plus I was photographing, I was carrying a lot of gear and I wanted to be able to stop and take pictures. It's really annoying to walk with a professional photographer because you have to stop a lot, take a lot of pictures. You got to get up early to get the sunrise. But that was the way I did it. So started in Muxia, which I adore Muxia, much better than Finisterre in my book. It's much more spiritual. It's much less Disney World. Mm-hmm. So then I went to Finisterre from there, tried like one day on the Camino dos Ferros, which isn't a Camino, but that is an impossibly difficult hike. If you think anything. Difficult? Oh my gosh, you're bushwhacking through the gorse and there's nothing out there. There's no water. Oh my gosh, it was so steep. So if anybody's looking for like a real bushwhacking challenge, you can walk between A Coruña and Finisterre on that Camino dos Ferros. Oof, it's a toughie.
And dos Ferros, that is lighthouses, right?
Lighthouses, yeah. So it's Camino of the lighthouses.
Real coastal walk.
Oh boy, that's a tough one. And it's marked by like these little green ghosty looking guys. It's really funny. But it is marked. So that was how I did it. And it was nice because I'd spend the evening with pilgrims. I knew what was coming because they were on their way and they'd say, okay, so what's next and what's out there? And it would be really fun. And then in the morning they went their way, I went my way.
So I never thought about the fact that you still are getting that pilgrim experience, but really being able to have solitude and how enjoyable that you guys could exchange stories about what the other was going to experience the next day.
Yeah. So that was really, I enjoyed that a lot. I would do that again because I really enjoyed that.
Now, Lisa, I'm very curious. I barely can follow. I mean, the Frances is marked so well, right? But I still feel like I could get lost any second trying to follow the arrows. What's your secret for doing it backwards? Because I feel like that would be tricky at crossroads or,
It's not though, because from Muxia it's marked to Santiago. There's like 4 markings on everything. So the SDC markings say you're going to Santiago. From Santiago, follow the blue arrows backward to Fatima.
Okay.
So it's not that hard. Sometimes you have to turn around and look on the back side of the tree to look, is there a marker? It's not that bad. It's different, but it's not that bad. And I have an eagle eye for yellow arrows. It doesn't matter if I'm at Target parking lot. If there's a yellow arrow, I'm going to see it. Yeah, my son gets tired of it. Hey, yellow arrow. He's like, Ma, we're not in Spain. Yeah, so it's not that bad. Yeah, you do have a little sense of direction, but you're walking toward sunrise or sunset, one way or the other. So
very true. You're so right on the seeing the arrows. I was at getting a rental car the other day in Lyon, and the rental car parking lot had these yellow arrows, and I got so excited, and I was like, wait a minute, that literally is just an arrow to which way to get out of the parking lot. Like, really, Pilgrim, you need to calm down.
But there's always a yellow arrow somewhere. So
I love it, right on your shirt. That is brilliant. Yep. Now, I know that you are a very talented photographer. So, yes, your photos are gorgeous. And I wanted to talk a little bit about 2 things when it comes to photography. First is, I wonder about capturing the Camino through photos, because we're all taking so many photos as we're walking. And so I wonder, as a photographer at your talented level, what could you describe for us maybe your favorite photo that you've taken, or your favorite 2 or 3, and why? Like, what is it about those photos? And maybe if you're willing, we could share those when I share this interview, because
that'd be great. I do have a favorite.
Yeah, okay, great.
I do have a favorite. If I had it handy on the computer, if I knew that, I would have.
I know I should have said something.
But and I love street photography, documentary photography. And if anybody really wants to see some amazing Camino photography, go to Michael George's website. He did The Soul of a Pilgrim for National Geographic, and he walked twice, and he wrote all the text, which is really unusual for National Geographic. He wrote all the text and did all the photos. And he came and did a photo workshop at the Gathering one year, and he was a huge inspiration. So check out. I'll give you the link for Michael's page. But I think it's really important to be present. And on that Camino, I was intentionally taking photos, and I think it's important to do everything with intent. So it wasn't just like random snap, 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 snap. I think it's really important to be present. And I really try to keep my phone in its holster and when I'm walking. I try not to be doing that because I think it's very distracting. And then you get home and it's like, what did I take all those pictures of anyway? So I am hugely personally, haters are going to hate, but I am really turned off by the people who are posting every single day. Here's 9 pictures or 20 pictures or 29 pictures from my day. Look what I did today. Well, you're not being present in your Camino, either in the evening while you're on your phone in your bed posting those, or during the day while you're doing it for the gram, and, I'm fortunate enough to have studied with some really, really important social media star photographers who are also extremely talented photographers, but their bread and butter is just sell photo tours. But the doing it for the gram ones are not the pictures that they love the most. So my favorite picture was, I left Pilgrim House, which I love Pilgrim House, big plug for Pilgrim House, which is another way to volunteer, by the way.
Yes.
Volunteer for Pilgrim House.
I've interviewed Faith and
oh, good. So big plug for Pilgrim House. But I walked out of Pilgrim's house. I had done this little card reading session and stuff. I was all happy going to mass at the cathedral, and I came around the corner, and it had to have been August, and there was a big street party going on, and there were pilgrims doing limbo in the middle of the street with the hiking poles for the limbo poles.
Oh no!
And one guy had a big cigar stogie and he's doing his limbo and there's a huge crowd. And I got that photo. It was just quick snap. I'm going, and I actually won a prize for that photo.
You did? That's amazing.
And it's my favorite. It says everything Camino spirit in that one photo. You've got the people in hiking gear. You've got people just going, what's going on? You've got the limbo guy. You've got the stogie. You've got people playing, music in the street. To me, that was everything Santiago, everything Camino. People joyously celebrating the end of their Camino. So I'll have to send you that one photo because to me, that is my quintessential Camino photo.
Oh my goodness. I don't think I've ever seen that. I cannot
I'll have to post it. Yeah.
Yes.
It's to me, it just says everything. Technically, it's not a fine art photo, but it's a documentary photo, but it says everything Camino to me. So
yeah. I love that. All right. Well, we will share that. So for the folks that are taking photos and they want to capture that right photo, when you talk about presence and intent for that picture taking, do you have some advice? Like, should they plan out in the morning, oh, I'm going to try to take this kind of photo rather than having their phone out all day, right? Because almost everybody that's not a professional photographer is probably using their iPhones or whatever. And it is a distraction, right? You bring it out, now you see a text from home, or you bring it out and whatever. So is there do you have I guess kind of a ritual that you follow? Like, do you plan what you think you might photograph, or how can you be in that mindset to get that great photograph possibly, but also not have your phone out the whole time taking also at the end of a Camino, I have a million photos, right? And it's crazy. It is absolutely crazy trying to go through and edit and then find the one that I actually want to share. So I wonder what if you have any tips for us?
I'm also a real big fan of printing your photos. If it's not worth printing, it's probably not worth taking. So if those photos were actually important, then this is something you're going to spend money to print. But I think when I'm being the pilgrim, or even when I'm being the hospitalera, I am going to get up extra early so that I can go out and get the mist on the river in Nada in the morning before, everybody's out and about. And I'm going to plan to be able to get up on top of the hill. I could send you a really pretty sunset photo from up on top of the hill in Nada. You do have to do a little bit of planning, and there's wonderful apps that will tell you what time sunset is and at what angle from wherever you are in the world. None of us are actually guessing. That's a tip. No pro photo people are guessing when sunset's going to be where they are. When sunsets, and what angle, and how high you have to be able to get it. So nobody out there is guessing about that. So if you really want to be really intentional about it, then you know that you want to be done by walking at a certain time so you can be at a certain place. If you know that there's going to be a mass and you want to have photos of the church, don't take those photos during mass, please. That drives me crazy. I never ever take a photo during mass, ever. Never would I. But
or
get there early
as a tourist while mass is going on. I just had that experience in Santiago.
Get there early and take your photo, or stay after and take your photo. But don't show up in the middle. So a little planning is important. And then there's those serendipitous street photos that are totally worth it. But it's all day long, snap, snap, snap of every arrow and every rock. You're not paying attention to your journey, your inner journey, that's for sure. And guess what? The rest of us probably don't need to see those either. And I'm just going to tell you flat out that drones on the Camino are such a huge no-no to me. I've been buzzed by the things, and it's such an invasion of my space and my own personal time, but I don't need to show up in your commercial photography. And so, I mean, I live in the world of social influencers and blah, blah, and that's a huge bugaboo to me. So yeah, I'm very down on that. So it is what it is, you know. And sometimes I feel like I have to put a disclaimer. No, this is not a drone photo. I actually hiked up there to get this photo. But there's some beautiful footage out there. But if you're a commercial photographer, I think you have an obligation to say that, not just put clickbait out there. Because newsflash, YouTubers get paid per click, and they get paid more the more clicks they get. So if you're going to feed somebody's addiction, just know what you're doing.
Did not know that. Well, just so everybody knows, there's nothing going on my side.
I didn't mean to imply it, but it's
no, I know you're not.
It's this whole, the social media has invaded the Camino in more ways than one. Way more ways than one. And we talk about people, it's isolating themselves in their bunk. It goes well beyond that. And social media has made, like I said, like I told you, when I first started my whole Camino research in 2013, there were maybe 2,000 people in one Facebook group, and now.
What is it now?
I don't even want to know because I don't go there anymore. So
I'm trying to, maybe the 90,000. I don't know. I'm trying to think.
It's just nuts. It's just nuts. So, yeah, there's certainly really good places to go for information, but just know you can over prepare. That's for darn sure. And I do the Camino 101 lectures. I understand people's need to control their situation, their need to control, at least on their first Camino. You will never see anybody go to packing and planning for their second Camino because they realize that control thing is an illusion. So,
and no matter what you plan for, the Camino will still give you something different.
Life does give you everything you need and then some. So
exactly. You never know what your challenge is going to be, and you can try to, pack every medicine you can think of. You can try to pack, but something else is probably going to come up. One of the things that I've been talking to recent folks about that I've been interviewing is something I'm very fascinated in, and that is why we walk again. The first time I walked for grief processing, and I couldn't wait to get back here. Could not wait. And I wonder what your thoughts are on, what is that pull? We know that there's this, I guess, seed planted the first time we come. I don't know if you feel that way, so I'll have you address that as well. But what makes us want to walk again and again and again and come back and volunteer? And,
I can only address this from an American perspective. I think it's different. I'll give you my 2 cents because you asked. I've lived abroad, so I do have a little bit of a different, take on stuff. Excellent. A little, and I've taught university abroad, but for the most part, I can only look at the American experience on both sides as a hospitalera and the Americans that I've met and as Pilgrim. I think that we don't, the bigger question to me is not why we go back, is why don't we have that experience here? Why can't we and why don't we create that Camino community here? Why do we have the car culture here? Why do we not have a walking culture here? Why do we not have cities set up to meet with people? Why do we only have Walmart supercenters and not local shops like they do in Europe? I've lived in France. I've spent a lot of time in Spain. I've spent some time in Portugal. I've been to a lot of different European countries. Why did we choose to set ourselves up in a situation where you are isolated from other people? You don't have a connection to the food you're eating, that you have to get in the car by yourself to go anywhere. to me, that's the bigger question. So that why we go over there is to get those things. Why do we have to go to Europe to get that? Why do you have to go to Europe to get fresh bread that only costs €1? That just shouldn't be a thing. You should be able to do that wherever you are. So why do we go back? I think because we miss that. And it's also a break from reality. It's not our everyday lives. It's not. There's no way you can say it is. And when I hear somebody's walking for a year, well, okay, that's not real life either. That's never real life, because we do have responsibilities, and we do have, to feed ourselves, and we do have a responsibility to our communities. Can you check out for a year? I don't know. So I think we go back to try to recreate that experience only because it's so different than our everyday life here. And I think it's another reason why Europeans tend to go and do 2 weeks at a time and come back, 2 weeks at a time and come back. Whereas, Americans and Australians or New Zealanders who are traveling, forever to get there, got to do it in one shot. Yeah. My European friends don't have that same perspective, that they're perfectly happy to spend, their 2 weeks here or there, or all of August, hiking somewhere, whether it's on the Camino or if it's in France or Germany. That's an integral part of what lets them be productive the other 12 months of the year. We don't have that mindset here. We don't even pay people when they're sick so they can stay home. So that is a little piece that I think people try to go and get. You get ready-made friends. You got people are going to put food in front of you. You're going to put beer in front of you for €2 all day. So I think that that's part of it. We can't create it here, or we don't create it here. And I like to talk to people a lot about, I call it unpacking your Camino. Everybody's big on packing for the Camino, but I call it unpacking your Camino. Figuring it all out when you get home. How do you keep that community going? I've been blessed to keep that community in my life since 2014. But how do you do that?
Yeah, and what would you tell someone if I were just finishing my Camino and you were to meet me in Santiago? What would you say to me? It's my first Camino. I've just finished.
Be gentle on yourself. Don't expect anybody else out there in your life to understand what you just did. Don't expect that from anybody else. But I actually start before that. I suggest people write themselves, their post-Camino selves, a letter before they leave.
Ah, okay.
Leave it on the table, sealed, and open it when you're ready, when you get back. These were my fears. These were my expectations. These were my worries. These were what I thought my motivations were going to be. And then try to match that up against what really happened. So that's where I started. Write your post-Camino self a letter before you go. Something my son and I did was we sent ourselves postcards. So that kept from wherever we were, from the Camino.
Oh, it's such
so
a
that when we got home, those would come in dribs and drabs, sometimes out of order. Whatever Correos was going to get it to us. But that would show up, and we would have written, we liked this, we did that, we met this person, and it would have a picture, and then it would show up at home. And then we put those together. So that was a more intentional version of taking cell phone photos, I guess. That was our journaling process. And it was good because he was 10 and 12 and he could do that as well. But we still love to go back and look at those to remind ourselves. And it's pretty funny to see his 10-year-old handwriting. But
preciously.
So that's a cheap and easy way to kind of keep that Camino experience coming. And then to find those ways to serve in your own community. Catholic worker houses are very much like Camino albergues, communal homes for people who, anybody that needs it, without judgment, without acceptance, needing specific acceptance. They carry on that Benedictine idea of hospitality, and they're everywhere in America. So find a way to communicate your basic takeaway, which is usually something to do with community, something to do with human interaction that we're missing on a regular basis. There are lots of ways to be able to integrate that into your daily life here in the States. And we also have some homegrown Caminos now. The Wisconsin way, my friend Stacey Wittig, I did an interview with her, and it's up on YouTube with no clickbait, but it's on the Boston chapter of American Pilgrims on the Camino website on YouTube. And you can hear Stacey's talk about the Wisconsin way, and she's actually working on the first guidebook for that. Excellent. So, people who aren't ready to travel abroad or really just want to get that Camino fix. But then there's also the Camino mission, the mission walkers in California who are recreating the original Camino Real. And I did walk on that a little bit this year as well when I went to see my sister in California. I walked with the Ventura Pilgrims, and then I did some on my own, and I visited several missions. I walked from my sister's house to the Lompoc mission, La Purísima. So there are ways here at home to incorporate that. But, why don't you get up and go for a walk every day when you're home? You got to really look at that. Yeah. So.
And I think Sandy Brown is actually getting ready to publish a book on the mission walk in California. So soon, I know there are some online guides.
There's a written guide too already. Yeah. And it's actually by Briar. It's not quite Briarly. It sounds like Briarly, but that's
it looks like it, right?
Yeah. But that's out there too.
I saw it. Yeah, I was like, is that John's brother or something?
No, it is funny Camino coincidence.
Yeah. And Sandy biked it and walked it as well, I think. So he's going to have a book out soon on that. And Stacey, she's somebody I do want to interview and talk to her. So maybe you can connect us. That would be.
You should, yeah. She also wrote the guides for the Fences, and they're spiritual walking guides. They're different. And she also did the one on Lourdes to Saint Jean Pied de Port as well. So
I've got to talk to her.
Highly recommended.
Yeah, the one in Wisconsin, are people opening up their homes? Are there like places to stay in Wisconsin? Like, do you know?
It's some combination, like everything, combination of church halls and bed and breakfast and motels. And so they're working on putting together some infrastructure. Cool. But yeah, she's walked it with Father Abuna Moses, and they're doing some wonderful stuff. So a good intro is to watch that video interview with her.
Definitely. Well, can we put that link in the show notes, or is that something
Absolutely.
That's a member of Boston's group?
Nope. It's out there. Yeah.
Oh, well, that's great. All right. Oh my gosh, the show notes are going to be really critical, everyone. So I don't know how many we've promised now, but we'll try to get as many as we can. If I miss one, please comment and let me know, and we'll get it back into the show notes. But wow, Lisa, I know we've probably gone around a lot of different things here, but I really appreciate all the information that you provided today. This has been a lot of rich information and a lot of wisdom and philosophical sharing about what you've experienced and now kind of what you have put together about the things that are important when we walk, after we walk. So I really appreciate you sharing from your heart what you've learned and what's served you. And when will you be back in Spain? Have you decided? Because you're moving, so I don't know.
Yeah, I know. I'll be back in Spain volunteering October to December. I'm going to go back to Lourdes and volunteer at Cité Saint-Pierre, and then I'll be back in Nájera mid-November to mid-December again. We'll close it out again next year, and it's so nice to be there with all the Christmas decorations and everything. So I'll be back, and my son's graduating, my niece is graduating, I'm moving, So we got a lot going on, but yeah, I've already got that planned. So
yeah, well, I think you've really created a beautiful life of being able to stay involved with the Camino and, walking still and volunteering. So for folks that are listening that have interest in and don't know, like, how can I get more Camino in my life? I think you are living that right now. And it's a really cool example of one of the ways that we can give back and one of the ways that we can stay involved with the Camino. And so, yeah, thank you for all these stories and examples of how it can be done. This is beautiful. And the ways that if you're US based and you can't travel to Spain, don't want to, that there's other things that you can do. And you've really given me something to chew about to think on about why have we created that kind of life in the US? And, because people always say to me, well, I'm kind of scared to walk across, Spain. I'm like, well, I feel safer here doing that. And it always makes me a little sad that I don't feel that same comfort level on trails in the US. And I wish that I did.
And this is a very different, we're not talking about the Appalachian Trail or the Pacific Coast Trail, or this is a very different experience from that. It's not a through hike. It's just not a through hike. And I think it's important for people to separate those things, because people go, oh, well, we have long trails in the States. That is not the same. And it's not the same because there's a big difference between a walk and a pilgrimage. But I know trail families are trail families everywhere, but it's a very different experience, I feel, because I've been on a little bit of both. That Camino community is a really big thing for people forever, and for most people, not for everybody. And the after effects are not immediate for everybody. There can be such a sense of letdown at the end if you haven't experienced this life-altering epiphany. And I think it comes down to expectations. If you can set that expectation in the beginning that you're going to take what is given you in terms of experiences, that you're not going to have a big experience, celebration that's going to change your life at the end, and let that really process. And that's why I really urge people to spend as long as they can, because the 10 days is probably not going to give you what you might think you're going to get. And don't have the same expectations for 10 days as you do from 10 weeks. Set those expectations up front, and save the time for when you really can give it some time. But just have different expectations. I think it's in all things. Yeah. The expectations you set are going to determine your outcome. Yeah, I think that's important. And I still cringe on the how many days do I need to set for Santiago, or so what's your intention? Why are you going there at all? What does it matter to you to go to Santiago? So give it the time that is commensurate with what your intention is. Yeah. Are you running in and out to see the Botafumario, or are you just trying to repack and go somewhere else, or what's your intention? And set those intentions and give yourself the time that you deserve, and experience the time that it deserves. Yes. And let that process and simmer over the time coming back. This last time, I was really freaked out when I got to Madrid. The busyness and the rushing and the noise. I needed to just go sit in the museum cafe and just chill and have tea, because it was really freaking my senses out. I'd been, 6 weeks of basic quietness. And let yourself take care of yourself. Don't force yourself into something, and be prepared for that. Yeah. Have your friends stock your fridge, so you don't have to run to the grocery store the minute you get back. I mean, it's little things like that. Don't try to go back to work the next day. Give yourself that grace time to process your Camino. I think that's important.
I totally agree, Lisa. And I think especially, coming out of our isolation, our lockdowns, our sensitivities are very different. Even if you've walked a Camino before, I think coming and walking now is different. I know for me, when I walked this last time, it was we were just kind of coming out of COVID, it was still masks, still this, still that. But also, it was the first time that I had been around some crowds, like in Pamplona, going out for tapas. The tapas bars had just reopened. And I felt extremely overwhelmed the first time that I walked into one, and being around so many people again, which I would have never questioned that in my pre-COVID life, right? And I think many of the pilgrims that I walked with this time, there was extra sensitivity when we would land in places like Leon that were busier, that it was a little harder, and we needed to kind of take our time and maybe not be as social as maybe we would have been previously. So I think for people to be aware that we've all gone through a lot, and like you said, listening to yourself. And I think you said in one of the very first things you said about unpacking your Camino is being gentle. So being gentle from the start of your trip to arriving here to walking to the end of your trip is really good advice. I think maybe this interview should be Camino 101.
Well, I mean, I was in Pamplona right after you were, and yeah, it was like, oh my gosh, but I'm a big hugger. So to have pilgrims like, to do the elbow thing, but I had one pilgrim hug me, and I was like, and I don't like to be like that. That's not natural to me, but it's what we're being given right now, is that, because I'm going to be here for many more people, that I need to be healthy. And so, yeah, it's like I said, it's different. It's not better. It's not worse. It's different. And if you handle your own personal responsibility to keep yourself safe and keep other people safe, it's going to be good. But, I'm in a donativo where, everybody's coming and going, and not everybody's vaccinated, and not everybody wants to wear that mask. It's challenging. It's just different. And pilgrims are people too. I hate to break it to you, but pilgrims are just people. And people come in all different sizes and shapes and flavors. So not everybody on the Camino is going to have your mindset. It's a microcosm of the greater world. So I think that's really important to keep in mind.
Absolutely. I'm a hugger too. And oh my goodness, so many awkward moments of meeting people. Do you hit elbows? Do you fist pump? When you want to go in for the hug and somebody else doesn't feel comfortable with that? Or it's like you said, it's not better, not worse. It's just different. And, really always looking at your own comfort level and respecting the comfort level of the other person. And we're all making different choices right now, and trying to figure out how all that fits together. Complicated times we're in. Thank God we have things like the Camino, and hopefully we'll come out of all of this on the other side. And
we will. The Camino has outlasted many a plague and pestilence, and it will outlast this and us. It will outlast politics. It will outlast everything. So this is our tiny, tiny blip of a moment with the Camino. But if it makes changes back in your real world, I think that that's a wonderful way to spread those sun rays or tentacles or Camino arrow rays or whatever we want to call them, to cover those people who never went on the Camino but benefit from you having gone. I think all politicians should be required to do a Camino.
Me and you both. Me and you both. All right. Well, Lisa, I think we've gone way over our hour, but thank you everyone for sticking with us. I hope that people stick with it, because I think you've offered stuff all the way to the very end of this. So I'll end it right now, but please stay on so you and I can say goodbye. And everyone, hey, I hope that we get to see you on the Camino at some point. Maybe you will find Lisa as she's working at one of the donativos, and maybe we'll walk with you someday. That would be brilliant. So
that'd be great.
Thank you everyone for being a part of the Camino Cafe community and for listening to these stories. And I hope that you have a Camino story of your own very soon. See you next time.